Hello and welcome to Conquering Alba, where we take you to the historical places that make Scotland what it is today. Today we are in South Ayrshire as we visit the castle in the historic home of the Scottish King Robert II, Dundonald Castle. Robert II was the owner of Dundonald Castle. He was the son of Walter Stewart, the 6th High Steward of Scotland, and Marjorie Bruce, which makes him the grandson of Robert the Bruce. He was the first monarch in the House of Stewart. He became the king at the age of 55 upon the death of his uncle, King David II. He served as Scotland's king for 19 years before passing away here at Dundonald Castle. The location of Dundonald Castle would have made it part of the Strathclyde Kingdom, where the capital is Dumbarton Castle. The word Dun means hill fortress, so the castle's translated name would be the Hill Fortress of Donald, although historians don't know who Donald was. The castle's site's past stems back to 3,500 years ago. The castle's rich history is illustrated for all ages through initiatives in education, archaeology, events, exhibitions, weddings, and tours by local enthusiastic guides. There have been 3 medieval castles present on this site. The first was probably built by one of the stewards of the King of Scots, most likely Walter, the first steward who came to Scotland in 1136. There is no surviving evidence of this castle above ground today. The second castle was built in the late 13th century by Alexander Stewart, the 4th High Steward of Scotland. This castle was predominantly built of stone. It would have been one of the grandest baronial residences of its time. It was largely destroyed by the Scottish during the Scottish Wars of Independence in the early 14th century. King Robert the Bruce had a policy was to slightly demolish most castles so they could not be used by his enemies, including much greater castles than Dundonald, such as Edinburgh Castle and Roxburgh Castle. There is little remaining of the second castle. However, there is a well and a rounded stump of a tower near to the present. The third castle, which is the one that remains today, was probably built by Robert Stewart to mark his ascension to the throne as King Robert II in 1371. It was 3 stories high. The top floor above the lofty stone vault was the upper hall, or the Great Hall. It was for the more private use of the king and his family. The first floor was the lower of the two halls. It would have been used more for public activities like feasting and the holding of the Baron Court. The ground floor was a storage area. It was probably originally subdivided, providing cellars for different commodities like wine, ales and foodstuffs. The tower house was extended in the late 14th century to add additional private chambers and a prison. The third castle comprised almost of everything that you see above ground today, including the tower which dominates the hill. Dundonald Castle once had its own chapel dedicated to St Inan, who was the patron saint of Irvine, Ayrshire. He is said to have come from Iona and to have died in Irvine, where his tomb was reputed to have been the site of miracles. By 1520, the castle had passed into the Wallaces of Craigie. The family held on to it, although in 1536 King James V granted the castle and the lands to Robert Boyd. Despite 2 attempts, Boyd was unable to evict the tenants by force and eventually resigned the castle and the lands to the Wallace family. In 1632, the Wallaces were forced to sell the castle to a man named James Matheson, but by the time the Wallaces had abandoned the castle and moved to the Auchins House, a large residence built nearby in the 1580s, partly with materials robbed from the current castle. That is why Dundonald Castle does not have a roof. Both properties were bought by a man named Sir William Cochrane in 1638. Sir William Cochrane extended the Auchins House in around 1640, and in 1669 Cochrane created the first Earl of Dundonald for his support of the Royalist cause in the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. In 1726 the Cochranes sold their Dundonald estate but retained possession of the ruined castle. In 1953 the 13th Earl of Dundonald gifted the castle to the state and work began on its restoration. We hope you have enjoyed today's video here at Dundonald Castle, where the monarchy of the Stuart dynasty began with King Robert II. If you enjoyed today's video and wish to see more of Scottish history, then please like and subscribe, and until next time, Alba go bra.